Hello there, and welcome to the very first episode of What's Behind the Mask. I am Kat Toronto, but you may already know me by my photographic alter ego, Miss Meatface. I wanted to create this video series in the new year, as it's been something I've wanted to do for a really long time, and I finally have the time to do so. Now, I'm sure some of you have probably never heard of myself or my alter ego, Miss Meatface. So I wanted to have these first few episodes as a bit of an introduction to myself, Kat Toronto, as the artist, as well as an introduction to Miss Meatface. Miss Meatface is an ongoing photographic series that I've been working on since, I would say, about 2015, like mid 2015, but her origins lie further back into 2014 and 2013 as well. So I thought it might be interesting just to share with you all the origins of Miss Meatface, how she came to be, etc., where she came out of during my the period of my life that she was created out of, essentially. Yeah, I just thought it would be a good way to start off the series. So I want to take you all back to the year 2010. I was 29 years old and I was working at a library full time. I am a graduate of the Kansas City Art Institute, so I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts, but that is not where I ended up as career-wise. In my 20s and 30s, I worked at a library in Northern California for about 9.5 years, which was a fantastic job, and I really enjoyed it. But at the same time, it wasn't following my artistic passions, and essentially, I know it sounds corny, but my dreams, my artistic and creative dreams. So in my spare time, when I wasn't at work, I was at home in my studio, just working on my art. I spent a few years making hats. I was a milliner. I had my own millinery business. I'm also a singer, so I was singing in a band. And I always kind of dipped in and out of photography. But it never, I never had enough time or the money or et cetera, to put everything into photography. But it was always a passion burning deep within me for quite a while. So getting back to 2010, when I was 29 years old, I found out that I had cervical cancer. I'd been diagnosed with cervical cancer, which was a huge shock to me. It's not really something you expect to have happen when you're 29. I mean, it sucks anyways, but yeah, I thought, I'm 29. Come on, like, really? But yes, cancer can happen to anyone at any age. So there I was at 29 in this job that I didn't really want to be in. It wasn't exactly fulfilling my artistic dreams. I was also in a marriage that I was not very happy in. The relationship was a pretty long one, and it was just time for me to reevaluate my life. And the diagnosis of cancer forced me, pushed me into the position of what am I doing with my life? Am I happy? What can I do to make myself happy? And yeah, what needs to be done in order to change this life trajectory that I was on? So, so began my step back into photography. I started taking self-portraits, as well as putting my textile degree to use. That was my bachelor's of fine arts. I had it in textile design. And I started making masks. I've always been interested in masks and costume, historical costume in particular, but the connection for me to historical costume is the fetish as well. I always loved clothing items that could manipulate the body form. So corsets, side hoops, hoop skirts, all those sort of things. So in college and in high school even, I was creating historical costumes for myself, and a lot of them did incorporate corsets. I was 12 years old when I made my first Victorian corset reproduction. So it's been a long obsession for me. But anyways, getting back to masks and getting back into photography in 2013, I started making masks for the self-portraits that I was doing, which I have right here, and I thought I would do a bit of show and tell. So these are some of the first masks I made. I just sewed them from a simple pattern that I found online, and some of them are a bit more primitive than others. This is my devil mask, and I've got bunny masks here. You know, a lot of them are unfinished. A lot of them don't have grommets or closure in the back. I would just use a safety pin to close them in the back, which was fine for my purposes, for my use. I have this one here. Little cat. So I was making these masks in 2013 and 2014 and creating sets around the masks and the outfits that I either sewed myself, or I would take bits and pieces of vintage costumes and outfits and then create whole other new surreal ensembles to wear for these self-portrait photo shoots I was doing. So it was also around this time that I was creating these self-portraits that I began an obsession with Victorian spiritualism, and I started incorporating the fantastical aspects of Victorian spiritualism and mediums and seances into these images. And eventually I decided to title the series the Spirit Saints series. So each of these characters I was creating for the photographs also became saints in a way, and each of them were different saints kind of stemming out of my own fantastical reality that I had been creating in my head to also get me through the really difficult period of going through the surgery for the hysterectomy and the cancer, and having this fear that I was going to die on the operating table or something was going to happen. And so it was through these saints that I kind of was able to use them as a kind of art therapy, and they would comfort me in knowing that they would be with me while I was having the surgery, and whether I died or survived, which obviously I did survive the surgery and it was totally fine. But just knowing that these saints were there with me was a huge comfort to me. So that is kind of where the big obsession with bringing masks into my photographs came from, eventually leading up to the Miss Meatface persona. So this was 2014 when I had the Spirit Saints series that I was working on. And then from there, I started playing around more with masks, and I did make more of my own masks, but I'd always been really interested and drawn to latex and the world of fetish and BDSM. And so I knew that moving forward within my photographic self-portraiture, and I knew I wanted to keep doing it. So I knew that after the Spirit Saint series, I was going to experiment more, bringing more fetish and BDSM aesthetics, visuals into my photographs, and explore it within myself as well. And this was actually something also relating to my personal life that my whole life, I mean, essentially from being a teenager onwards, I had always been drawn to the aesthetic and the concepts behind the world of fetish and BDSM. But I'd never felt completely comfortable within myself or with my partners. to explore it more. And it was also kind of a shameful thing in a way. I felt ashamed and like embarrassed and shy to talk about it to my partners and to other people. So I'd never given myself the chance to delve into it within myself anymore. So this was a point of huge change in my life. And I knew, okay, you know what? You've got to just go after anything that you think is going to make you happy, and explore these things, and don't be ashamed of it. It's not hurting you. It's not hurting anybody else. And you know that there's something there that you have to find out more about within yourself. So that was just a part of my whole huge step towards a new life, a new direction for myself and for my life. Um, so I began sourcing more fetish related articles, articles of clothing, accessories to incorporate into my self portraits. And then eventually, this is kind of the point where I was incorporating, like, for instance, I was incorporating my handmade masks with bits and pieces of fetish accessories, corsets, stockings, ballet boots, etc. And this is where Miss Meatface grew out of. Um, so, yeah, so, and by that time, it was about early to mid 2015, and my life was taking huge steps towards massive changes, in good ways, but also very difficult ways. And yeah, so after the Spirit Saint series, I started delving more into the fetish, and this is where Miss Meatface evolved out of eventually. So by mid 2015, my marriage was ending, and I was starting on a new journey, essentially. I was about to quit my job at the library that I had been working at for 9.5 years, and I was following my new love of my life who lived in the UK. And so I was uprooting myself from the United States, moving to the UK, but also there's so much baggage and complexities connected to that. It's not just as easy as, picking up, boop. It's not that easy. But it was one hell of a journey, and it still is an ongoing journey, which has been amazing, but also utterly heartbreaking, challenging, frustrating, agonizing. Um, it's a challenge. It is a challenge, but it's all a part of me, and it's all a part of Miss Meatface, and my art. My art has changed and evolved with me, and it's been incredible. So that is probably where I'm going to leave this episode. There is so much more to go into. But I really did just want to share with you the very beginnings of Meatface and the masks that I was making. Thank you so much for watching this very first episode. Hopefully I did not bore you to death. Hopefully you found it somewhat interesting, weird, intriguing. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. And please, if you're enjoying yourself,